Krista used Pearson's product moment correlation coefficient to compare the use of public transport with the use of private vehicles for travel to work in the UK. And using pre-release data set, the large data set for all 348 UK local authorities, she considered the four variables on the right. Number of employees using public transport, number of employees using private vehicles, and then the proportion of each. And we're asked to explain in context why you'd expect strong positive correlation between X and Y. Y is the number of employees using public transport increases, the number using private vehicles increases. But think about this one carefully, and it's going to be because as the population increases, both of them are naturally going to increase. If you're looking into like cities and so on, there's going to be a high proportion of people, sorry, not proportion, that's the key thing here, a high number of people using cars and using public transport. Whereas if you're in a much smaller local authority, there's just going to be a lower number of each as well. Of course, there's going to be some exceptions, but this you'd still expect strong positive correlation. So we just need to write that down. I wrote down both X and Y will increase. This is a good example, by the way, of correlation not implying causation. Just because there's a strong correlation doesn't mean that people using public transport implies that more people will use private vehicles. It's just there's an um, underlying factor that is the population that's causing both to be larger as the other one's larger. So both X and Y will increase as the population increases. So X and Y will have strong positive correlation. Explain in context what kind of correlation you'd expect between A and B. So note now it's the proportion. I'm going to give a little hint later on in the diagram, to be fair. So it's going to be negative correlation. And the reason is simply is, remember it's proportion now, so it's not about the numbers. So as a higher proportion use public transport, it's going to naturally mean a lower proportion is going to use private vehicles. The higher the proportion, okay, now Krista also considered the data for the 33 London boroughs alone, and she generated a scatter diagram on the right. One London borough is represented by an outlier in the diagram. We can see it right here. Suggest what effect this is likely to have on the value of R for the 32 London boroughs. So as we've talked about negative correlation in the whole thing. We can see it for sure here. And basically this outlier is going to mean that there's less correlation. So um, but you've got to be really careful here because actually R is technically going to increase. R will increase um, and become move further away from -1. So you could also say it's going to decrease, but that is you need to still quantify it and say that there's actually less correlation. But technically, it will be quite close to -1, and it will actually become more positive. So it will increase. So make sure you clarify your comments. What effect is it likely to have on the value of R for the whole country? Well, it's probably going to um, make it closer to zero again. However, over the whole country, there's a lot of local authorities, and so this one particular value is not going to have much of an impact, and that's what they're looking for here. It's going to have little effect. You could say it's going to maybe slightly make it go closer to zero, but you should really be saying that it's not going to have much of an impact. little effect when considering all 348 local authorities. What can we deduce about the area of the London Borough, represented by the outlier? Explain our answer. Now, I thought it actually meant like the size of the borough, so I said it's probably going to be small because there's a low proportion of people driving. They may be close to work or something. And that's okay to say it's close to work, but it doesn't actually mention the mark scheme anything about the size. It says we could go with people don't travel far to work, jobs are close, high proportion walk or cycle, or they classified it as type 2 answers, any reason why few people drive, few garages, parking expensive, or similar in context. Well done.